Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? Good. My name is Jai. I'm the student pastor here at the Crossing, if we've never met. And yes, my shirt has oranges on it. I just don't want, I've had enough questions this morning. I don't want y'all straining like all morning. What is that on his shirt? It's oranges. It's just oranges. I like oranges. It felt summery, so I put it on. Heard rumor that Pastor Jay just doesn't dress up for you guys enough. People were complaining. So I had to go with something, right? Oranges, there you go. No, but we've been in this series called Summer in the Psalms, and funny thing is, when me and Jay started talking about it, and he asked if I would do one of them, I was like, I get Psalm 1. He's like, it's the last week. I was like, I don't care. We're finished up with Psalm 1. It's my favorite, so I've got to have that one. And before we jump into this in Psalm 1, if you've not been here, if you've not tuned in or seen any of the messages, go back and watch them. But you need to know about the Psalms, right, is that really it's a very different type of literature from a lot of the rest of the Bible, right? It's more poetic in nature. It's not like a lot of the history part of the scriptures. We're explaining Israel's history and going through this, so it's very different. But it really feels more like these journal entries. It's King David wrote most of them, and he's just sharing with people like you would in your journal, think about the things that you would write down in your journal for those that are journalers. Some really personal stuff, right? And he doesn't pull any punches. Like he flat out lays it out a lot of times where he's at in his relationship with God in the moment, and a lot of times it is a hot mess, and a lot of times it's really good, and he just kind of takes you through this journey. And so that's kind of where we're at. We're just going to start with Psalm 1, and the great thing about Psalm 1 is it's really readable. And so I'm going to ask you to do something that all the teenagers hate when I ask them to do it, but we're going to see if you've grown as much as they do. And I'm going to have us all stand up, and we're going to read it together. Can we do that? Yeah, you weren't quite as complained about this as a teenager do about it sometimes. So there you go. So here's what you got to know about it, though, before we start reading, all right? It's very readable. It has a really good flow to it. For all you speed readers, this will not work that way, all right? It doesn't work in a public setting. So we're going to pace ourselves on 3, all right? We'll read it together. 1, 2, 3. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your word. Maybe this morning, may we delight in it. May we be open to it. May we allow it to change our hearts and change our minds to help us to live a way that you want us to live. We love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, y'all can have a seat. Thank you for participating. I love it. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm a very visual person, so this is why you see lots of random objects whenever I teach or whatever it is. But so as I was studying this, though, I very much so saw this like long drawn out from beginning to end spiritual journey that a lot of us that we go on in this relationship with God. And so to visualize this, I was kind of like, well, do I use a whiteboard and draw it all out, or do I do it on the screen? And I honestly, it got so detailed that I was like, if I draw this on the whiteboard, I'm going to forget it. Like, I'm going to forget so many key things, so we're going with the screen today, all right? So as we jump in, you want the good news first or the bad news first? My people. Where are my good news first people? Anybody? Is anybody good news? All right, there are a few of you. Where are my bad news first people? All right, they're my people. You got to have the bad news first, right? Because that way it makes, like, when you get the good news, it makes the bad news not feel so bad. I don't know if that's the way you'd word it or not, but yeah, there you go. It just makes it not feel so bad. So here you go. The bad news first is there are wicked people in this world, right? There are wicked people in this world, and you don't have to look that far to find them, unfortunately. I remember Angela and I wanted to take Isaiah to our son out to the library. And not surprisingly, someone's phone rings, right? You know, he's off looking at the books, and we kind of just sat down doing our thing, and somebody's phone rings, and it's an older gentleman, and he takes his call, but like, it's so loud that we hear like every single word of the conversation that's happening, that's going on. And, you know, it starts off, you know, hey, just normal stuff, but it's like it triggers to the meeting because like, hey, you want to accept so-and-so's phone call from so-and-so facility? And we're like, well, that's kind of different, you know, so it just catches your attention. You don't want to eavesdrop, but somebody's in the library talking that loud. It just happens when you can hear everything that's going on, all right? Just being honest. So they just have normal conversation a little bit, you know, hey, have you received my letters? You know, yeah, I've got them, I've read through them, how's things going where you're at, type conversation. But then it takes like a real unforeseen turn that we just weren't expecting sitting in the library with our kids. And he's like, yeah, I just got released on a 30-day hold. You know, they're putting me animal cruelty on my record. And, you know, now the people from church don't know. You know, I haven't told them all. They all kind of thought I was visiting my brother. And I've been thinking about those things that we had been talking about, you know, insert some bad stuff. And they're like, well, I'm going to get. So I've been away for a while. They're going to put some things on my record. And, you know, I got a whole lot of trouble there. And, like, the longer this conversation goes, like, the more my eyes just get bigger and bigger, and my wife's jaw is like dropping further and further to the point where we finally look at each other. We're like, I think we're out. Like, grab Isaiah. I'm going to mention something to the lady of the county. You may just want to keep an eye on this person. I don't know, but I think we're out. I mean, so yes, there are going to be wicked people in this world everywhere that you go. And absolutely, you've heard stories. There are people that come to church their entire life and do some very wicked things. But the truth of the matter, here's the kicker. They're not your enemy. There are wicked people in this world, but there is only one enemy. Satan is the only true enemy that we have, and we're working out a whole series for the fall to dive more into who he is and what he does. So, but what does David write about the wicked? He says, so he says in verse 4, he says, not so the wicked. Like, the wicked are not what? They're not blessed, right? If you remember what he had said, they're not blessed. He says they are like chaff that the wind blows away. And so David, he's trying to give us this visual picture, but I'm not a farmer. I did grow up on a farm, but I'm not a farmer. And I don't know about you, if some of you maybe know farm elements, but I was like, okay, what exactly is this idea of the chaff that blows away? And so it's really, if you put that picture up there, so wheat, like when it's grown, it kind of goes through this process they called winnowing. And so they take the wheat and they'd throw it up in the air, and anything that was good, anything that was of value, of worth, would kind of stay there, right? It would go straight down to the bottom. But anything that was the chaff, anything that was basically worthless of value as they're doing that, would what? It would blow away, right? It would blow away in the wind, and it would just be gone. And that's what David is trying to get across here, right? That is the wickedness in this world, like, it's not going to last. It's not going to last forever. At the end of the world, actually, the wicked, they're not going to survive. And so he goes on to say this in verse 5. He says, therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment. He says, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. And so David mentions, this event called the judgment, and that yes, at the end of our life, or at the end of the world, right, that we will stand before God, and we'll take account of our life, and we'll be judged. So we go to this next part of our spiritual journey, right? That we all, every single one of us, we have a choice. We have the choice of going with sin in the rest of the way of the world that wants to go that direction, or we have a choice to give our life over to Christ, to have a relationship with God's Son. If you've never made that decision, like, it is the most important decision that you will make with your life. You'll make a lot of big important ones, but that's the most important decision you will ever make. And if you've not made that, like, we as a church, we want to come alongside you. We want to be in with you that decision. But many of you have already made that decision. So then you go into the spiritual journey part of discipleship, right? Where we just become like this sponge. We become like this. We start to begin to crave God's word and teaching and what's going on at the church and Bible study and everything. And something happens that within God's truths, like it begins to change our hearts, it begins to change our minds, and we become this new creation. We become different than who we are. And then typically what we do, we get plugged in and we begin to serve, right? That's our next part of our spiritual journey. We start serving, become the hands and feet of Jesus. Like we begin using our talents, our abilities, our gifts, all of these things that God has blessed us with. We just begin using them for him, and we become his kingdom workers, his hands and feet on the ground, and living out the Great Commission, really living out his purpose of, hey, go make disciples, and you're making disciples using those things that he's blessed you with. But then I think what happens, the large of us hit what I call the wall. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that or how you've felt that, but I've noticed that a lot as we hit with this pocket of wall, where it's like this, we become stuck in our journey with God. Maybe even frustrated. Anybody ever been there besides me? Maybe we begin to say things like, I'm not sure if God, like, I don't know if I feel God anymore, I don't know. And even if I did, I'm not sure that really he likes me or wants to be with me anymore. I want to pause because it's such an important of our faith. And if we go back to the idea of what was just before the walls, we get somehow so consumed with doing, right? Our culture, as Americans, our culture is obsessed with what we can do. And Jesus sometimes wants us to just be. And in our obsession with do culture all the time, we hit this wall. Think about it for a moment. When the first time when you meet somebody, what's some of the beginning conversation? Well, hopefully it starts with you asking each other's names, right? Hey, what's your name? What's your name? You talk about that. And then what's the second thing you usually ask? What do you do, right? Because we're obsessed with what people do. That's like our way of putting together who somebody is, almost, if we know what they do. And I'm just going to be honest, as a youth pastor, I do everything I can to avoid this question, because there's nothing normal in the job description of a youth pastor that people are like, it's just so weird when you look at it as to our culture, because they're like, hey, Jai, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. Like thinking, like, what in the world am I going to say to these people? Like I help teenagers stay out of jail. I don't know. That just sounds weird. Like, what do you say to these people? And I'm like, oh, that's weird. That doesn't work. Let's see. I text teenagers. Well, that'll probably put me in jail if I'm not careful. That's not any better. So I'm like, okay, well, I teach teenagers. You know what comes next, right? Well, what do you teach? I'm like, dang it. They're like, there's just no good answer to this, because as soon as I say Jesus, as soon as I say I'm a pastor, I'm a youth pastor, until you experience it sometime, it just shuts down all conversation, or it just takes a really weird turn. And it's just not an easy conversation. We're so obsessed with do culture that what do we ask preschoolers at their graduation? What do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? I'm waiting for the day that one of the kids is like, I just graduated preschool. Can you give me a hot minute to figure my life out? Like, really? Like, what do you want to do? Poor kid just got out of preschool. But I want to dig in a little bit deeper into this journey, because we're going to talk a little bit more about the wall and how David really kind of shows us what this blessed life looks like. Because there's salvation, but then he's kind of goes a different, like there's more to it. He says there's this blessed life, and someone, he just says, blessed is the one. Can we be honest that a lot of us look at the idea of thinking of a blessed life? It's probably a lot more worldly than what we want it to think, that we want to admit to ourselves, right? Like if my life's going great, if my kids aren't having public meltdowns, like if I've just got all the things kind of together, maybe have a lot of really nice things that I can say that I've acquired in life. That's kind of I don't want to admit that, especially in church, but let's just be honest. That's sometimes where our mind can go. So like many of you know that I own a Peloton. If you don't know what a Peloton is, it's an exercise bike. My life got me one for Christmas 2020, COVID Christmas, like the perfect work out at home type thing. And like if I wear a Peloton shirt around the youth group, it's awful. They're like, oh, it's Peloton Jai, yay! And I'm like, stop it. They're always giving me a hard time. But I came across this Peloton Facebook group. That's what happens when you like something. Like you go find all the Facebook groups. So I got into a couple of those, but I thought it was so fitting to this idea sometimes of what we think blessed is. And so he makes this first post, and they just ask, kind of just a genuine question, like, does anyone take their Peloton out, like bike on a boat? If you do, what do you do for Wi-Fi connections? They need Wi-Fi to be able to play the videos, at home video stuff. And he's like, just planning a trip to the Bahamas during summer, and I want to take my bike. Just guy, just genuine, want to go on vacation, want to take my exercise equipment. That's just what he's there. But then another guy posts this picture of like his giant boat, right? He's like, well, we have the deckhands move it around for us. And then it just kind of progresses from there. And this one lady, her response I read it and I just couldn't quit laughing because that's what I was thinking too. And she's like, I just keep Pelotons on my yacht, at my shore house, at my house, my ski house, and one into the garage for insert cuss word for kicks and giggles. So my maid has something to do. And I'm like, that's right. Like that's what sometimes we feel like. Well, there you go. You're living the blessed life, right? You got your Peloton and a yacht, and you just have your deckhands moving around, and your maid has their own Peloton. And sometimes we do. We begin to look at stuff like that, and we can joke and say, well, would it be so bad, And we have those thoughts. But what does David say it means to be blessed? It's really two things, and it's not a Peloton and a yacht, sorry. It's not a sports car either. It's really these two things as we're going to wrap up with kind of these two things that he goes through. And he says in Psalm 1, verse 1 and through 3, he says, blessed is the one whose delight is in the what? The law of the Lord. And who does what? Meditates on his law day and night. Says that person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. So here's kind of what I want us to see with this next part. How do we get around the wall? How do we get around the wall that many of us get stuck in? And it's whatever we want to call the wall, whether it's the wall of unhappiness, whether it's the wall of represents doubt, whether it represents reconciling like what you believe about God, but what you're experiencing in life, those things not matching up to what you think it should be, whether it's the wall of being angry, whether it's the wall of being too rich, whether it's the wall, maybe somebody calls it deconstructing of their faith, and they're trying to tear those things out. What if the wall, what if it can actually be a good thing? Like those struggles that we have in trying to figure out our relationship with God and what that looks like when we're not so sure about everything. Like what if this wall that we're experiencing is actually an invitation or an indication that we need to sit down and we need to really begin to hone in what is, like, who is God really? What does he really want for my life? And like who am I in my relationship with him? Like it gets us to go past all this Americanized version of Christianity or whatever culture we live in, Christianity. Like it really boils it down to really who God is and what and these are the things that like David wants us to do. Like, but we live such hurried, go lives that some of us just miss being with God, just existing with him. Like, when's the last time you got away just to be with God? Like, sometimes as teenagers, we're really good at this. Like, right, we go off to maybe camp, Maybe you go off to a CIY conference, and like we did a couple of weeks ago with these high schoolers, and we just have a lot of time just to be. Like you'll never see more growth within a teenager's life than you will in these weeks that they get away at camp or they get away to CIY conference and just be. They don't have so many of the distractions that they're always used to. They're constantly taking in worship song after worship song and message after message, and we go and we have group time where we talk through it, or there's part of the group time where honestly we play a part of the message where it's like just a guy in a very calm voice. They've got a very peaceful background music to it. He'll read scripture and we'll just sit and we'll just listen. And then he'll stop talking, give us some thought to think about, and then the sound will just play. And we just sit there quietly. And we don't talk. Don't listen to, we don't take anything in. We're just thinking about our relationship with God. And when's the last time you've got a way to be with God? We're not good at that as adults, are we? We don't just go on retreats a lot. I think that's a huge part of something that's missing in our journey with God. I remember one of the first times I was ever taught how to do this. I was in this class in Bible college called The Preacher's Inner Life. I had no idea what I was signing up for. Just sounded good, right? It sounded good. It's going to be a preacher. I'm going to figure out my inner life. And so I signed up for this class, and we did different things, talked about the heart and the mind and all those different parts of our lives on the inside. But I remember that one of the final things we did was we went away on this weekend retreat, right? We went to this campground, and one of my professors, JK, he was like, hey, this is the part where we're going to kind of send you guys off. We want you to take your Bible and a journal and a pen, and we just want you to kind of go out, find different space on the camp and just kind of sit. And I was like, all right. How long do you want us to go for? Like, when are we supposed to know to come back type stuff? And he's like, I don't really want you to come back necessarily. He said, I don't care, 3-4 hours. And I was like, okay, this is different, right? This is different. I've never done this before. And so I went out and I found a bench out by like a lake area at the campground that we were at, and I couldn't really see anybody, so I just kind of sat down, and the first 10, 20 minutes are great. You're just kind of, there's no noise, there's no music, there's nothing else going on, so you're just kind of listening, just sitting there, and can hear like the wind in the trees, and you hear the birds, and it was peaceful for about 20 minutes. And then your brain starts going, I wonder what Josh is doing. Like, that's my roommate, right? And I'm like, wonder how close by he is. I wonder if he can hear me. Hey, Bloomy! That was my nickname for him. I was going, where are you at? You close by? And no answer. And I'm like, oh, man, this is going to be a long time. I just got nothing. Just going to sit here. Okay. Minute 21 through 60 was rough. It was rough. And so if you try this, like, you just got to be honest with yourself and say that we're not good at just being. We're just not good at that. And so it was tough. So I began to kind of read my Bible and start taking down some notes and writing down questions about things that I had, and just kind of talking out loud with God. And I'm not going to say it was the most amazing, like God spoke to me, I got all these revelations, but it was a good training for me. A good training for me to realize that I don't need all this stuff that the world has to offer me. I don't need every little thing to keep me busy, to keep me doing all the time, like sometimes we think we do. Because what are we doing out there? A lot of part of it, it's what did David tell us to do? He said, I want you to the blessed person delights in God's word. Like delights in it. Like it becomes a part of this point where I'm not reading my Bible out of obligation or reading it just to get something for somebody else or whatnot, but I'm reading it because I enjoy it. Like if you delight in something, like think about something you delight in, like you'd say, oh man, I love that. Like I I love donuts. I'm sorry, I love donuts. Like, I delight in that. So that's what I think of when I think of the word delight. Like, do I sit down and read God's word in the same delightment that I would have if whatever it is, a good steak for you, you know? What if you're the food? I'm sorry if you're not a food person. I gotta get better at this illustration thing. But yeah, do you delight in it? Or what else? He says the blessed person, he says they meditate on God's word day and night. And the main thing I always want to talk about when people talk about this idea of meditation, he's not talking about the emptying of your mind. That's like an Eastern religion. That's something that's kind of pulled over into our culture. So when we think about this idea of meditation, like we're emptying our mind of everything that's going on in life. When Christian meditation is not that. It's the idea of filling your mind. Like filling your mind with God's word and truth, because that way it's something that you take with you. And I remember part of it was one of the words or phrasing that one of my Bible college professors used. He said, we want you to chew on it. Like, that's what it means to meditate. I'm like, chew on it. Okay, like gum, right? Like the closest thing I can think of. Okay, like a stick of gum. It's just something that I chew on. So it's like you take a verse, right? You pick a verse or two from Scripture and you chew on it. You read it. Maybe you write it down somewhere. Maybe you put it on a picture on your phone somewhere, something to where it's like, and you take that with you and you chew on it all day long. And you let that be the focus of your mind. You let that verse, that truth, be the focus of your heart for the day. That's what it means to meditate on something day and night. Like, that's part of what's going to always come over to overcome this wall that we have in our relationship with God, is we truly just be and know him and know his word. And guess what happens next? We become this tree that David is writing about, right? And what happens when we begin to meditate on his law, then all of a sudden this fruit starts to grow in our life, right? And right in love and peace and patience and kindness and gentleness. So again, the first time I ever read through the fruits of the Spirit that Paul talks about in Galatians, right? I thought it was a to-do list. I'm like, oh, great. Well, I can go love somebody, or I can go be kind, or I can try really hard to be gentle, not really my strong suit, but like we can try, I can do all these things. It's not a to-do list. And it took me a long time to realize that. It's a results list. It's I'm going to become this list. Like whenever we want to do all these things, it doesn't happen that way, right? It's the fact that like peace, love, self-control, gentleness, all those things, they flow out of us as a result of spending time with God. And so if those things aren't flowing out of me, I probably know what's missing. I'm not just being with him enough. I don't know who I am in him enough. I'm not spending that time with him. So I'm really going to challenge us in this, like to just be. Just be with God. And I'm challenging myself too, because I am far, 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 far from perfect in this. And you're like, yeah, the pastor, yes. Because you know what I'm tempted to do every single time I read God's word? I want to get something out of it for somebody else. And so I as well have to work at just being and taking in what he has for me. And so I'll admit that 100% I need to grow in this area. To just be with him. And so what the second part that David talks about, this blessed life, he says, blessed is the one who does not walk in the step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers. And so the first most important part, I think, is to be. Just be with God. But then David clearly spells out the second most part of us getting around our wall is the right people. Right? The right people. It's so important in our life. Like, besides God, the most important thing we need is to live a blessed life is to have the right people in our lives, honestly, watering our tree, watering us, being a part of that and us watering them. Like, they're the ones who are going to encourage you. They're the ones that will call you on your stuff and be like, no. That's not godly. That's not something that's good for your life. Or, hey, have you noticed this about your life? Like, I'm not, and those people, I get our tendency is nobody likes to be called out. So we're like, what are you stirring around in my life for? If they're the right people, give them permission to stir around in your life, because they're going to be the ones that are going to water your life. They're going to be the ones who are going to give you what you need, and they're going to give you guidance. And as long as it stands up with the truth of God's word, then you want them to be there to grow. Because here's what happens. Here's what happens if we don't have the right people in our lives. What happens? I just want to go back to verse 1 again. You notice the progression of what happens if you don't have the right people. It says, blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked. Because if you walk with them, what will happen? Or stand in the way that sinners take. Like, you'll begin being the one who's standing, doing what they're doing. He says, or sit in the company of mockers, and eventually you'll sit and you'll stay in what they're doing. This is what happens if we don't have the right people in our lives. So I just want to ask you, can you even begin to imagine what the ripple effect would be in our community, in our homes, if every single one of us that calls ourselves a Christ follower, that if we would learn to just be with God and have the right people in our lives? Can you even imagine the effect that would have on our community and on our homes? That is what God and what David, I believe, is spelling out for us today. And so this morning, as we come to an end, like, if you don't have that relationship, there's going to be people at the crosses this morning as we close. I mean, you can go and you can talk with them and see what it's like to start this journey for the very first time. Like, we don't want you to go through that process. And if you're questioning things, great, because that's a great place to start. And so go and talk through those kinds of things and search out and see what you believe and start that journey. But the second thing is, man, find your people. Do you have your people? The people that you're going to let stir in your life, the people that are going to guide you and encourage you. Have those people in your life. And the last challenge I'm going to give you is I want to challenge you to take the meditation challenge. Like, I've got some scriptures up there. I just wanted to leave that up there as we finish. You can take a picture of it if you want, or I'll post it on social media later. Just I want you to just take these verses, or whatever verse you want to choose. If you want something else, I just want to give you some options. Take these verses and take it with you all day long. Carry that truth with you all day long on that day, and see what that does for your relationship with God. Meditate on it. Keep it with you. I pray that it'll be a blessing. We can discuss it later on Facebook if you need to say it's awful and you didn't like it, but that's okay. I'm good with that. It's try and learn and grow, right? All right, let's pray. Father, I'm so thankful that you're a God that you don't look down at our mess, which is probably what so many of us would describe our lives at times, is that we just feel messy. But Father, you see it, and you love us. You care for us. You want a relationship with us. Father, and we thank you for that you're a God that wants to be involved in our lives. So help us to use this. Help us to find those right people that we need in our lives. And Father, maybe to weed out some of the ones that are dragging us down, that are steering us away from you. And Father, help us to dig deeper. Help us to truly know who you are and what kind of a relationship you want with us and how you want to continue to change and grow us. We know it's for our good because you love us. So much so that you're willing to give your son to die for us. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Have a great rest of your day.